Let's talk about ankle taping. First of all, pre-wrap. I don't necessarily recommend pre-wrap if you're going to use it in the athletic setting, but for practicing and if you got hairy skin that you're worried about tearing tape off of, go ahead and use pre-wrap. Get it to lay nice and flat. Make sure to cover all the areas that you plan to apply tape to. You can tear off any rolls that form, like you can see there. I'm just going to tear that roll off. It's not as picky when it comes to wrinkles in it as it is tape, so we don't have to be as strict with it, but we do want to make sure we get as much as we can reasonably out of there. So moving on to our anchors, our base anchors, I'm going to do one at the base of his foot. I want to leave enough room for his toes to spread out. Your pinky toe kind of likes to splay out when you apply weight to your foot, so I'm going to allow some of that to happen. 1 1/4 laps around is about good enough for the anchors. So I'm going to do the same thing as you can see here, a couple inches proximal to his or from his ball of his ankle. Again, 1 1/4 laps. Now I'm going to apply some stirrups. These stirrups should apply some proximal pressure to his heel bone. I'm going to always start these elements from medial to lateral, as you can see here, so from his inside towards his outside of his ankle. I don't want the tape to promote rolling outwards of his ankle. All right, I want to provide support, so I'm going to go underneath his heel and cover both balls of his ankle and attach those strips of tape to that anchor spot. I'm going to do this 3 times. I can offset to either side to get coverage, making sure I get nice pressure applied to that joint in his bone or in his foot. So as I'm doing this, you want to make sure that you position your patient so you can reasonably work on them. You see I have to kneel down here. Ideally you're working at a trainer's table, so you don't have to do this. You'll also notice that how I have him positioned at the 90-degree angle, you want to keep them that way. If he drops his foot, which you'll kind of notice he does a little bit later on, that's when a lot of the wrinkles can start to show. It is kind of difficult to maintain that position with your foot, so being efficient with applying your tape is important so your athlete doesn't fatigue, and then reminding them to maintain that position the whole time. So I'm going to apply some horseshoes, again working medial to lateral, so I'm going to go from anchor spot to anchor spot on the lower portion of the foot. So I'm going to attach my first strip of tape for my horseshoe to the big toe side, wrap around the Achilles tendon, laying the tape nice and flat, and attach it to the pinky side of the lateral side of the foot. I'm going to try to keep wrinkles out and smooth as I go. Again, as I'm doing this, I'm spreading the tape out. I'm not doubling up. I'm overlapping by about half or so to get coverage on my tape. I want to try to avoid tape cuts. So as you can see, I'm applying layers, and I'm paying special attention to his Achilles area. Ideally, I would have padding and some lubrication to apply here, but the pre-wrap does some of that for me. So now I got to kind of remind him to position at 90 degrees, and I'm really looking to make sure I cover that area of his Achilles. One last horseshoe here, making sure I usually do about 3 or thereabouts. It's going to depend about how high up your top or your anchor is, your proximal anchor. Now for the most difficult part, arguably the heel lock or figure 8. So we're going to start like a stirrup. I'm going to go under the heel, covering the ball of the ankle. Now instead of finishing like a stirrup, we're going to come over the top of the foot. Right there, that middle spot at the top of the foot. We're going to go around the back of the Achilles. Again, getting your tape to lay nice and flat. I'm going to come over back across the top of the foot again, aiming for that same exact spot, kind of making an X with my tape right at that spot here. Now I'm going to go under the heel again, and now it becomes a stirrup. So I'm going to finish it just like a stirrup, but I've done a figure 8 or locked the heel in place with my tape, and that's why it's called that, either the figure 8 or the heel lock. You should do 1 or 2 of these. Now for the top anchors, and we're also going to cover holes. So the purpose of this is we're going to, all those elements that we just applied, we want to hold those down, keep those in place from becoming dislodged when the athlete runs or moves. I'm also going to cover any holes, any gaps that you see other than the heel. is going to run the risk of skin poking through those holes and cutting the skin. It's very painful and it can bleed. So we want to make sure we cover those holes. So particularly that spot right there that, again, ideally has some padding to it. Make sure that gets covered with tape. And then behind the Achilles. You'll kind of notice that on the pinky side, what do I have going on? I got kind of a tape hole, right? So I'm going to want to find that tape hole and cover it. Otherwise he'll come find me later and tell me about it because it hurts. Thanks for watching, y'all.